A judge now is putting more people in prison, and again, it's just shifting our resources. We have limited resources. We're in a tough economic time. Do we really need to be building more prisons, or should we be building more universities and schools? Should we be building more homes?
That's a wonderful statement. And Jagmeet and I appreciate that statement. We would always love to build more prisons. We would like to have more people in college.
How do you mean prisons?
There are more black people in prison than there are in college. That's a sad statement. I mean, that's not to put a disparaging comment on a particular community, but the fact is that there are more people in prison doing that than there are going to school. Now, you can always say there's social issues, there's economic, et cetera, but the problem is that after a little while, society kind of says, you know what, we've had it. I mean, gun owners aren't the people who are shooting people. It is these Saturday night specials and the guns that are coming from the states that are unlicensed. If you're a gun owner, what you have to go through to own a gun is unreal. But all these people who are being shot don't have the licenses and don't do that. And then they use the gun charge as, I mean, you can speak to this, Calvin. They use the charge of having an unlicensed gun or unlawful possession as bargaining tool to get something else to go. So, I mean...
Yeah, well, the problem with minimums is that, you know, the buck has to stop someplace, and you have to expect that the judges are going to apply the law, and they're going to do the fair thing, and they're going to see a person who, you know, maybe has a mental illness or was just a minor party on some gun offense, for example. But to have a minimum penalty, you're taking away all the power of an impartial person that has all the facts on a case-by-case basis. And I've seen judges where somebody's been victimized.
If you know that if you're caught with a rod in your pocket and it's illegal, obviously, and you know that you're looking at 5 years just for holding that, is that not basis for you to consider that maybe we shouldn't have that?
Yeah, it's specific and general deterrence, but it doesn't seem like the studies have warranted that. I mean, when you read all the studies, it's I've seen you know, if you get a gun, you know, a very good chance that minimums or not, you're going to get whacked pretty bad. You're going to go to court, and they're going to take a pretty dim view. And if you got a victim who's been shot, you're looking at penitentiary. So I mean, I don't know if minimum is just a poor schlep that gets caught in the kind of gray area that
don't say poor schlep.
Might be.
There's nobody called the poor schlep who's holding a gun. I disagree with that.
No, but I'm building on Calvin's point. Great point. I mean, there's this clear studies done in Michigan where they had a time period where they didn't have mandatory minimums, and they implemented mandatory minimums, and they wanted to look at whether it would reduce crime, because that was the whole point. Does it actually act as a deterrent? They found that crime rates actually went up under mandatory minimums. So the studies actually clearly show that mandatory minimums don't work. All they do is they shift our precious resources from one area and they shift it to the prison complex. And that's not the direction I think our society wants to head in.
Natalie, I want to give you a chance to chime in. You've been very patient in listening to us argue here. Natalie, go ahead.
Well, I actually do think that mandatory minimum are really the wrong issue to look at. You know, certainly the Canadian Civil Liberties Association says mandatory minimum are a disservice to our system. I mean, we have judges that are there that should have the opportunity to look at the whole circumstances, not only of the crime and of the offender, to give a reasonable assessment of what should happen to that person. I think it's almost preventing all of us who could be charged with something with the ability to be assessed individually. Now, you know, once you have a minimum sentence, is en bloc. It's no matter what the circumstances, you're a subject to crime, and I think it's actually a loss to our the way in which our justice system was aiming to act. But, you know, having said that, now that we have them and that we're working on them, it's going to give a lot of powers to the Crown attorneys who can decide whether to proceed with one charge or not. And I think we'll see what the results are. It could be that, and I agree that most of the studies that have looked at this is, you know, it does not work. It does not work in terms of reducing crime or reducing the way in which people act, because people don't think they're going to get caught. That's the reason why crime occurs. It has nothing to do with whether they think the punishment is high.
And prisons are filled with innocent people, right? When we come back, we're gonna change topic a tiny bit. We're gonna talk about the internet, and this is something that Natalie Desrosiers from Ottawa has some great insight. You're watching Left and Right. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We will be back with more right after this.
I first learned about Rogers TV from my home country. I was sitting one day on my bed browsing the internet and came across the website for Rogers TV. Seeing that I've held all positions before I started switching and directing, it's easier for me now to relate to volunteers, not to get frustrated when someone does something wrong. We as volunteers, we're not only treated as volunteers, but we're treated as staff. Rogers TV is my home, so that's what keeps me coming back.
The new host of Daytime, and coming up this season are a lot of surprises that you just don't want to miss.
From musicians to local events, we'll continue to keep you connected to your community.
As a nation, as a province, as a city, we've never done a very good job in connecting to War of 1812. Those who served were not Canadians in any sense. They didn't know Canada as an entity. They were British subjects. These were British citizens. Nonetheless, in whatever capacity they served, these are all people who volunteered to serve. They volunteered to serve in a capacity that might put them in harm's way. There was always a sense that, what would happen if, and there was a reality that they acknowledged that they might have to be, and yet they still showed up. The border itself is not an imaginary line. It's something that was fought over and contested. It's remembering what happened. It's remembering the stories of those that came before. It's about understanding our story, and a portion of our story, an untold or unremembered portion of our story, connects to the War of 1812.
Welcome back to Left and Right. My name is Michael A. Charbon, joined in the studio by Mr. Jagmeet Singh, who is the NDP Justice Critic, and also Mr. Calvin Berry, who is a former Chief Crown Prosecuting Attorney and now is a defense attorney in his own private practice. And joining us on the phone from Ottawa is Ms. Nathalie Desrosiers, who is the legal counsel for the CCLA, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Nathalie, I wanted to speak a bit now about the internet. There's so many things on the internet. We've got porn, we've got bullying, we've got so many elements that are happening on the internet, and it was originally established a long time ago as a portal of freedom where there was no restrictions. How do you see us moving forward now, where there are people who are launching unscrupulous websites, there's phishing going on, there's porn, there's so many things that are not what we really envisioned the internet to be, but because it is the Wild West still, there are so many factors to take into consideration. How does the Canadian Civil Liberties Association position themselves with respect to either restricting or evaluating the free-form internet?
Well, certainly I think the internet reflects very well our society. I mean, there are bad things and there are good things in our society, and they found themselves on the internet just the same way. So in our view, I think the way in which crime is being committed on the internet warrants some attention and some investigation, and certainly the same way that it does in real life, and that's the way it's going. So the internet indeed is not the complete unregulated form that you present, because it is incorrect to say that when people are on the internet they can never be found. Many of crimes that are committed through the internet indeed are being disclosed and exposed. Indeed, I think we just have a good example recently when the chief of the FBI is being found out having an affair because he left some trace on the internet.
Well, it's a horrible thing when the guy who heads the FBI gets found out of having an affair. I mean, does that kind of make you think, geez,
I think
the CIA, how good are you at your job if you can't even cover your own tracks?
It's not the affair as much as the idea that it could have been endangering national security, or doesn't look like he's too wise in the way in which he carries on.
It's interesting because the internet still in our North American concept is still the wild west, because you can gamble, although it's illegal. There are so many things that are going on the internet. When does it come to the point that we will have to start to supervise it? And then when do some people say that that's going to be a compromise of their civil liberties to do whatever it is that they want?
Well, I don't think it's not a question of are you going to supervise the internet. You're not going to be able to supervise the internet because there's no jurisdiction, there's no territory on the internet. So even if you have great legislation in Canada, people will go on a site that's in China or in the United States. So that's not the issue. I think the issue is more how and to habilitate law enforcement to do a good job when there are crimes that are committed through the internet or with the internet. And recently there were some attempts to expand police powers in that context, but in our view, they have to do it with respecting the way in which some measure of privacy. So we think warrants, seeking the permission of a judge to go after somebody is a good idea. We've had that for centuries, and we should continue to demand.
Well, piracy, Natalie, is one of the worst plagues on the internet. When you look at all kinds of things that are downloaded, and actually it was the internet that killed the music business. I mean, I'm a big music fan. Give you a moment to chime in on that from the internet standpoint.
Sure. I think, on the positive side of what the internet can do, we've seen it's one of the great equalizers. It can be a great tool for social justice. Many of the movements for greater democracy have been fueled by having access to the internet. And I think it's one of the most powerful, provides us with one of those powerful capacities to share ideas and information and knowledge. And really, moving forward in society, knowledge is really the greatest and most powerful tool that we have. And to be able to share knowledge, to gain knowledge, I think we really need to have an open and vibrant internet. And I think that the same protections that we have in our day-to-day lives, like the same protections of freedom of speech that exists in society, should also exist on the internet, taking into consideration.
When do you draw that line when someone releases cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad because they feel that it... No, I mean, this is an issue that we're dealing with, and that because of that, people start to die. Causes a war and people die, or someone...
I think there should be... I think there's the balance is where there's hate speech, where there's speech that could... if there's already a community that's already vulnerable due to society's pressures or due to whatever it is, if it's already vulnerable, we need to be careful not to attack that community. And there needs to be a measure of protection so that the type of speech we have doesn't create hatred or fuel hatred towards any particular person.
Before we do a wrap-up, Calvin, I want to give you just a moment here to talk about the internet. Have you had any experience with... I know you've had experience with it. I've seen your pictures online. But I mean, with regards from a legal standpoint, where do you see it going?
Well, it's the problem is the police and the Crown attorneys are trying to deal with crimes, and the criminal code is so antiquated and archaic, and you go to Ottawa, and they're going to go and try to decide how to fix things. You got luring on the internet with pedophile allegations. You got child pornography. You got people selling drugs on the internet. I've been defending some of these very things and prosecuted many child pornography, but there's so many good things. But I also, what I find is that Joe Public thinks they can get on the internet and say whatever they want, and but they think it's face to face. They wouldn't do it. It's like when people hide behind texts. You always get a bad text from somebody you seen face to face. They don't say 1/10 of that to your face.
Yeah, they wouldn't dare.
And so my point being is that there's a lot of accountability, and there's a lot of saying proactive. No, criminal libel. You can't go and start dissing people. There's going to be civil suits, and I think that the public has to be educated by the law enforcement to go, you cross the line and we're going to come and get you. And so there's a lot of ignorance out there, but there's a lot of good things and bad things with privacy and these poor people that get extorted, and some kid does something stupid, and it's all out there.
There's a lot of hair on that tennis ball, as they would say.
Yeah.
A lot of hair. Natalie, I just want to give you a moment now to wrap up. Just to give us about a minute of your summation, and we appreciate your opinions in being here today. So, Natalie, just in about a minute or so, where do you see things happening?
Well, it was fun to be on left and right as an issue, and I think what's interesting to me after listening to this is, the idea of protecting civil liberties about reconciling multiple interests. So you always want to ensure that privacy, freedom of expression, the ability to be treated is fairly looked at. That you're not going to just kind of in the rush of the moment try to do the good things and then forget how important it is to keep a democratic society where people are treated fairly, because that's the danger. The danger is to go too far and give powers to the police that lead to abuse, and that's our concern. Now, we're always happy, and we know that there are some good things within the system that correct themselves. So we just want to make sure we're vigilant. We're making sure that the abuse of power does not occur too often.
Natalie Desrosiers from Ottawa, Chief General Counsel for the Canadian Liberties Association. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us today. Jagmeet, a minute to wrap up your position.
Sure. I think with civil liberties, one of the most important things we have to keep in mind is that what type of society do we want to live in? We want to live in a society where we have freedom, where democracy is upheld, and to have a vibrant democracy, we need to have dissent. We need to have people who disagree. If that is in the form of a protest or in the form of a demonstration, we need to facilitate this democratic right. We need to shift the culture of the police so that it's not so adversarial with the community, and instead of working on controlling crowds, let's facilitate demonstrations so that people can engage in their civil rights in a safe and healthy way.
Why do you say this at the end of the program?
You know, and we need that.
No,
we also need to keep in mind that if we really believe in civil liberties, then they're a precious thing, a precious gift. They have to be protected as well, because things like that, things like our liberties and our freedoms are very easily eroded if they're not protected.
Jagmeet Singh, Justice Critic for the New Democratic Party for Brampton, Bramley Gore Malton. And we say he's a rookie, but he's very articulate, and it's people like this that make government worthwhile. Final word, Calvin Berry. Yeah, the lawyer's always got to have the final word. Calvin Berry, sum it up for us in about a minute.
I see it as a bit of a David and Goliath. You got the government, they got all this power, there's a big machine. There's a little guy that sometimes is being arrested, and he has to be afforded, and she has to be afforded all the charter rights and freedoms to be able to have justice and due process. Canada is a beautiful place because of the charter, and that's why we should be upholding it. And some bad people get off because of breaches, but there's general deterrent to the authorities to get it right the next time.
Excellent. Well, there you go. Three different opinions, left and right. Discussion, and I think I learned something. I didn't necessarily change my opinion, but I learned something. Again, I'd like to thank Ms. Natalie Desrosiers, the Chief Counsel for the Civil Liberties Association, that was from Ottawa. Mr. Jagmeet Singh, MPP for Bramley Gore Malton. He's the Justice Critic. And my buddy Calvin Berry here, former Chief Crown Prosecuting Attorney, and now has a wonderful, flourishing I was going to say dental practice, but almost. It's a legal practice as a defense attorney. When we return, our final segment and some final thoughts. You're watching Left and Right. My name is Michael Charbon. We'll be back with more.
I find volunteering at Rogers TV very fulfilling because it's put me a step ahead of my classmates, because the technology here is very advanced. What keeps me coming back to Rogers TV is just the awesome volunteers and the people that work there. They're just very caring. They care about you. They care about your safety, and they actually teach you. It's not like you're going in there and you're just watching them. They actually teach you and put you actually on the site and working. That's what just motivates me to keep on coming back to Rogers TV.
Business is like poker. One bad deal and you could be out of the game. Don't fold just yet. Let David Boychuk help you stack the chips in your favor.
It's business, and I'm all in.
Watch In Business Tuesday at 11 p.m. on Rogers TV.
The NFL is coming back to Rogers Center, and you can win a pair of tickets to see the Buffalo Bills take on the Seattle Seahawks December 16th in Toronto. And winning is easy. Tune in for the Golden Horseshoe Bowl on November 27th, when high school's top football team is crowned. Look for the Watch and Win secret passcode. Then enter online at rogerstv.com. The Bills are coming to Toronto, and your chance to win tickets is on Rogers TV.
Thank you for watching Left and Right and our topic of civil liberties. We'd like to thank Jagmeet Singh, who is the NDP Justice Critic, and also Miss Natalie DeRose from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. You know, things are always evolving, both the internet, the police. Our civil liberties are being challenged, and it's up to us to moderate and to evaluate. Again, we appreciate your comments and suggestions. You can leave them at leftandright@rogerstv.com. I'm Michael A. Charbon. Thanks for watching.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line at 905-897-3994 or email us your comments.
As a nation, as a province, as a city, we've never done a very good job in connecting to War of 1812. Those who served were not Canadians in any sense. They didn't know Canada as an entity. They were British subjects. These were British citizens. Nonetheless, in whatever capacity they served, these are all people who volunteered to serve. They volunteered to serve in a capacity that might put them in harm's way. There was always a sense that, you know, what would happen if, and there was a reality that they acknowledged that they might have to be, and yet they still showed up. The border itself is not an imaginary line. It's something that was fought over and contested. It's remembering what happened. It's remembering the stories of those that came before. It's about understanding our story, and a portion of our story, an untold or unremembered portion of our story, connects to the War of 1812.
Text RELIEF to 45678 to donate $10 to the World Food Programme.
This is Rogers TV, Mississauga.
Welcome to Daytime. It is Tuesday, and I'm Sonia.